How's it going, guys? It's Nutshell here, and today we're going to be talking about how you can eliminate at least a vast proportion of bosses from your raids by simply adding in one option to your game. And so what do I mean by this? Well, there is of course the Goons and Partisan that spawn at almost a 100% spawn rate if you choose to play certain maps and with one option ticked. And with the latest updates that have arrived within the game, you might be finding that you're wanting to turn off some of these bosses at least a percentage of the time. And the way that you can do that we'll get into, as well as if you're tracking down some of the ways to eliminate some of these bosses as part of tasks where you're maybe having to take out the Goons or whatever you're trying to do. If you're trying to hunt them down, whatever that might be, you can also do that easier as well. And so in terms of hunting down the Goons, you can pick any of the maps, and all you want to do is make sure that you are playing on locally hosted servers. So you can play all your standard Goons maps, whether that be customs, lighthouse, whether you're playing shoreline or even woods. You will pretty much get a 100% spawn rate of the Goons, and that is simply because of the fact that you're playing on a locally hosted raid. The Goons are spread out throughout all of these maps, whereas when you play on an online server, the Goons rotate between all of the different maps that they can spawn on. So there might be a high chance of them spawning on woods, and then they might rotate to customs, and then to shoreline, and then to lighthouse, and then back to woods, and they'll just repeat this cycle over and over and over again. And so you can tick on the BSG servers, and this is going to mean that the spawn rates of the Goons and also Partisan are going to come down to what you would see on the typical servers on the PvP side of the game. So essentially you can reduce how many times you're going to come into contact with those bosses. So if you're wanting to play customs, shoreline, lighthouse, woods, all of these maps that do spawn the Goons, and you want to reduce the frequency at which you're going to actually find those in the raid, this can be one of the biggest things to do that. And simply doing that is going to reduce those spawns, and so make the map more available to you. And it might mean that it makes going into the lighthouse area, into the military base, a lot easier as well. And so that is a big bonus to be able to get in there and do some of the tasks that are associated with lighthouse that you might have not been able to do just yet. And simply, if you want to have them at their normal spawn rate on the server, you can essentially tick this off and they'll go back to like 100% spawn rate. So if you're wanting to hunt down some of these bosses in the game, you can do that by simply unticking the play on BSG servers. You will suffer a few negatives when you do that, but if you are hunting down the bosses, it's going to be the best chance for you to consistently hunt them down because they're going to be at like 100% spawn rate. Now, I don't know the official spawn rates, but it seems like absolutely every raid that you play on a locally hosted server where the Goons can spawn or where Partisan can spawn as well do have him in it when you play on a locally hosted server, which is why you'll find that they are at one of the spots, especially on Lighthouse, for example, at the chalets or in the actual area itself, so the military base. You'll find them at either one of those, or vice versa. When you tick on the BSG servers, they'll spawn potentially on that map if they are on it on the PvP servers, or maybe they've rotated to woods and so you've not actually got them on Lighthouse at all, so you don't have to ever worry about them on that map. Partisan will still spawn at the typical spawn rate of online, so he could still spawn in Lighthouse, but it will be reduced from what you see when you play on an like an offline locally hosted raid, if that makes sense. So I'm not talking about loading in and playing the practice mode. I'm simply talking about the actual game mode where you can take stuff out of the raid, so you don't have to mess about too much with that. Now, in terms of some of the other things that you can do with regards to your settings. Now, one thing that can help you out if you're trying to hunt the bosses down in particular, or simply survive slightly longer in your raids, make it a little bit easier for yourself if you're really trying to just complete tasks and you're not too focused on looting, that sort of stuff, is making sure that you are playing in some of the night raids. Although it is a bit of a pain, at least when you first start playing night raids, this is one of the best ways for you to be able to not only find opponents easier, and with them having slightly less kind of aggro range to which they will actually engage with you because it's slightly darker, you'll find that the boss range as well is also reduced, but it is between certain times in the night. So but from 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning, you will essentially have bosses with reduced visibility, so they won't be able to see you from as far, which is amazing to be able to go in and take them out from a shorter distance in a more safe location and in a much more safe way. Obviously, what you can do is you can run nods. So if we put on the Bastion, you can see here we can run with, for example, the GPNVGs, which we can use, or whatever kind of night vision optics or anything like that you want to use. They really do help out. And of course, the darkness does actually help you once you get used to it. Now, if you're not so used to the darkness, what you can do is you can come into your settings and go to your post effects. You want to enable your post effects and put your brightness all the way up to 100. You can change some of the other settings. They don't do a huge amount, and even some of the color grading isn't going to make it that much easier for you to actually see opponents during the game. But there is one more thing if you are specifically going to try and target bosses in night raids that you can do to try and help yourself out. And that one way is to go and pick up your NVIDIA control panel. Now, what you can do from here is essentially, because the game limits how bright you can make your actual game, what you can do is select the display of which you want to make slightly more bright, so you'd be able to see in those night raids even better. And you can use the brightness slider in here to slightly improve the brightness, and you can play around with the gamma as well, which is also going to make some changes, and it's going to make the menu screen look slightly worse, to be honest. But once you get into the raid, dependent on the settings on your monitor as well and everything that you've done on your specific monitor, you can alter this so that when you load into a raid, you can see pretty much exactly fine as if it was a daytime raid. And this is one of the biggest things that you can do to help you out with some of those bosses in those nighttime raids, even with all of the other advantages that you can choose, and on those locally hosted servers where you can essentially find the boss spawns increase for the Goons and Partisan. So makes it just that little bit easier to see people. And you can also play around with this in your own settings to be able to optimize how it looks on when you're playing in just the daytime raids as well. Maybe it's too bright, maybe you're seeing too many of those kind of flares and stuff like that in the game in terms of light bloom and that sort of stuff. So you can reduce these settings to make it just how you want it, and I'd recommend that. Of course, if you mess around with it and you're really unhappy with it, you can just go up here and click restore defaults, and it will just set everything back to the original. And then, you know, you can decide to mess around with it even more or change whatever you want to do with that. And then if you do want to find the one that you actually like, you just hit apply, and then it's going to do that for you. And that is pretty much what I do in order when I'm trying to farm up those bosses and make some changes like that. So hopefully that's given you at least a couple of things that can help you out with the bosses and make it just that little bit easier for you to be able to remove them, and simply if you want to decrease the spawn rate of the aforementioned bosses as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Of course, it was a bit of a strange one from any gameplay, but it's really crucial for those of you wanting to reduce the amount of spawns on the Goons and of course Partisan, who might be bugging you out during the last update where they made some changes to the AI. But either way, hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.